So I'm going to start off today with the study of this book again. We're doing this one, Duties of the Heart. It is the Duties of the Heart. We're studying the section called, the section is called The Gates of Trust. In a beautiful video, a woman once came by the Lubavitcher Rabbi for dollars, and she asked for a blessing. She was going to South Africa. Is it going to be okay? The Rabbi said, of course it's going to be okay. You have nothing to fear. Don't be afraid. Strengthen your faith. How do I strengthen my faith? She says. And the Rabbi tells her, study this book. It's a 13th century work by Rabbeinu B'chaye, one of the most classic texts that we Jews have, very, very much accepted across the board by every single facet of Judaism. Extraordinary work, which really, really gives us an extraordinary perspective on how we are supposed to approach difficult times, which of course we're going through right now. People are concerned, people are anxious, and what we're learning is that it's the fear itself which we have to be afraid of. What we're learning is that fear is the antithesis of trust in God, and that the trust in God is the very tool which brings our desired outcome. If you want a positive outcome, you have to trust in God. You have to trust in God that things will be good, and then it will be good. Tracht gut, wird sein gut is how the Rebbe worded it in Yiddish. Think good, and then things will be good. But if you don't think good, if your trust is not perfect in God, it's not guaranteed to be good. If you don't have trust, it might not be good. The outcome might not be the way you want it. What we call Tov Hanira Vigler, revealed and apparent good. Everything from God is good. But sometimes, we've learned this in a recent course, there's different kinds of good. There's disguised good. Disguised good, which is really good. It just doesn't look good. It looks awful. It just looks awful. I'm just getting an email from someone who says, somebody's telling me right now that thank you for, it's over here. Thank you for offering great morning classes. Unfortunately, many of us are not on Facebook and do not want to set up a Facebook account. Many Chabad are using Zoom or YouTube. We consider another platform other than Facebook, so many of us can benefit from your classes. The answer, ma'am, is that you do not need a Facebook account to participate in these classes. I'm just sending her the link. Just click on Facebook.com. Unfortunately, people are struggling with this, that they don't understand that you can absolutely participate in these classes. You can participate in these classes with Facebook account. In any event, what I'm saying, folks, is that if you, there is good which is hidden. It's disguised good, which means it looks bad, but it's really good. Then there's another form of good, which is delayed good. It's really good. It's not good right now. It's going to be good later. What's happening now, the bad thing that's happening now, is going to lead to a positive outcome. And then there's a concept called greater good. I mean, this is deep philosophical stuff, which we learned in a previous course. What was that course called? I forget exactly the name of that JLI course, but it was very deep and it was very profound. But what we're learning in this course on the Jewish approach to fear and anxiety is that the fear itself is what we have to be afraid of. Because fear exhibits a lack of trust in God essentially. And when there is no trust in God, there's no guaranteed good outcome. I'd like to welcome Robin from Atlanta, Jen Moskowitz, good morning, Bernie, Stephanie, Advorchana, Adam Raphael, good to have you with us. Wow, Adam, what a pleasure. First time? Rabbi is your arm. Okay, there's nobody here, Rob, so I figured that I'm safe. But yes, you're right, I should sneeze in my elbow. And Susan, good morning, Susan. Shalom. Okay, good. So if you have this book, folks, we're starting in Duties of the Heart. It's on I'm going to page 351, which is where we're up to. We're in the Gates of Trust, page 2. If you don't have the book, I highly encourage you to buy this book. It's a worthwhile investment of your $40 or $50 to buy it on Amazon.com. This is the book by Feldheim Publishers, Duties of the Heart. Okay, good. So let's go further. We learned yesterday that someone who doesn't trust in God will automatically trust in something else. Good morning, Ed. If you don't trust in God, you will trust in something else. In the words of the Gates of Trust, he says, and whoever trusts in what is other than God, God removes his providence from him and leaves him in the hands of whatever he trusted in. As human beings, we are essentially dependent. We have a prime cause. We were not self-created, and because by definition we were created by something else, therefore we rely always, whether we choose to admit it or not, on something. We always trust in something. And I challenge you to consider what you trust in. What do you trust in? Do you trust in God? Do you trust in your bank account? Do you trust in your genius financial advisor? Or maybe your financial broker? Do you trust in your investments? What do you trust in? Every single human being trusts in something. If you trust in God, then God will never abandon you. But if you don't trust in God, then that by definition means that you trust in something else. And if you trust in something else, if you remove your trust in God, then God removes his providence from him and leaves him in the hands of whatever he trusted in. And that was a very, very powerful point that we learned yesterday. I'm going to keep it going. Another advantage of this trust is that it has the following effect. One who trusts in God will not submit to another. He will not set his hopes on any man or put his trust in human beings. If you trust in God, then you will not trust in human beings. Human beings just don't faze you. They don't faze you. I mean, you need them. You need human beings, your clients, as your partners, but you don't trust in them. You only trust in God. You will not be subservient to them in order to win their favor, nor will he flatter them. See, the word flattery is a very important word, because the question is, what will it take for you to abandon your morals? That's the key, that's the litmus test here as to who you're actually trusting in. Robin, we're on page 351 in this book, Duties of the Heart. We're in the section called Gates of Trust. The question is, who will you flatter? And that's your litmus test as to who exactly you're trusting in. Because if you're trusting in a human being, then you'll do whatever it takes to make them happy. Anything to make them happy, because that's who you trust in. But if you trust in God and the human being is merely a conduit for the blessing that comes from God, then you will not abandon all your morals for that person. A good example is your most treasured client. So let's say you're like Robin and you're an accountant and you have lots of clients, but you have one client that might be the one that really is the one that you depend on. And that client wants to meet with you on Shabbos. Or maybe on Yom Kippur. Or maybe wants to take you out to a non-kosher restaurant. Now, you never want to say no to this client. So what do? I think if you're asking for the page, Robin, we're on page 351 in the Gates of Trust. So what do you do if this person, if your client invites you to a non-kosher restaurant or something which defies your religious values? Right now, you're going to have to make a decision. You're going to have to decide, is kosher more important to me or is my client more important to me? And that way, whichever way you take this, will tell you who you trust in. Say if you trust in God and the client is merely a conduit for the blessing, you'll say, sorry, I don't do that Yom Kippur, or I don't do Shabbos, or I don't do non-kosher restaurants. But if you find yourself going to the non-kosher restaurant or working on Yom Kippur for this client, you'll realize that I trust in this client, and that's really the litmus test. He will not agree with them in what is not the service of God. Their ways will not frighten him, and he will not be afraid to oppose them. I can tell you on a very deeply personal level, as a Chabad rabbi. Chabad rabbi is very, very interesting life that we live as Chabad rabbis. We're part rabbi, we're part entrepreneur. There's two parts to us. we on the one hand we're like sort of executive directors of the Chabad houses. We're not hired by a board of directors that they pay us a salary and take care of our health insurance and whatever else. On the one hand, we're responsible for the whole for the whole operation. At the same time, we're also spiritual leaders. So we have to straddle two very interesting lanes. Now, what happens with the Chabad rabbi is that sometimes, one of the reasons why the Rebbe set it up this way is because if a rabbi is hired by the board, then he's completely reliant upon the board. Completely reliant upon the board. And if the board wants the rabbi to do something, they'll say to him, listen, Rabbi, they'll wave the checkbook in his face. And they'll say, look, if you value your job, then you will do this, that, or the other. And that's going to become a huge conflict for the rabbis, very difficult. But as Chabad rabbis, we never have that problem because, at the end of the day, we don't work for the board. The board helps us tremendously. But at the end of the day, we are, the founders of the company, of the Chabad, and therefore we don't have to work for anybody else. Where things do get interesting is where you have a very treasured donor. If you have a donor that is a big supporter of the Chabad, and now you've got and this donor wants you to do something which conflicts with your religious values, now you've got a big problem. So as a rabbi on a deeply personal level, I can tell you that this is something which is often a test. Sometimes somebody will tell you something which conflicts. Rabbi, I want you to do this for me. I want you to do that for me. I had a fellow here once, when we were first starting to build the shul, and he understood what we were trying to do, he offered me $1 million if we would take down the mechitza. Now, that wasn't a difficult decision, but it was just interesting to be able to experience that kind of a question. $1 million would have solved all my problems at the time, and we would have been able to build the shul of our dreams. But obviously I couldn't do it because my values, my allegiance is with God and not with this particular donor. So this is something which I believe we are tested with every single day. And even in coronavirus as well, we are tested as well. Who are you trusting in? Who makes you nervous? Who gets you calm? Or do you get calm when the president announces that he might have a vaccine for coronavirus? Or do you get calm waking up in the morning knowing that I am a Jew and my Father in heaven will never abandon me? That's the big question that you have to ask yourself. We continue. Their ways will not frighten him, and he will not be afraid to oppose them. He will divest himself of the finery of their favors and free himself from the burden of expressing gratitude to them and the obligation of repaying them. When you say thank you to somebody who helped you, you say thank you, but it's not, you don't say thank you like your life depends on it. And that's the key difference here. When reproving them, he will not shrink from offending them. If he humiliates them, he will not be timid before them or adorn what is false. As the prophet said, but God, Hashem, helps me, therefore I was not humiliated. Therefore I've set my face like a flint, and I know that I will not be timid. Isaiah. Another quote from Ezekiel, do not be afraid of them and do not fear their words. Do not fear their words and do not be intimidated by them. Another quote from Jeremiah, do not be afraid of them. Last quote from Ezekiel, don't be intimidated by them. I have made your forehead like stone, harder than flint. Do not fear them and do not be intimidated by them. This, folks, is the meaning of two things, of the expression speaking truth to power. The only way that a person can speak truth to power is when you're not intimidated by the power, when you realize that there's something higher than the power that both of you are subservient to. If you believe that the king holds power over you of life and death, then you'll be afraid to speak truth to power. But when you both believe in God, at least if the speaker believes in God, you've got nothing to be afraid of. I wonder how you feel about this, folks. Please do share your comments and thoughts in the comments box over here so we can see, so I can know where you're holding and what your thoughts are. Another thing I want to tell you is that at the very end of the daily service, we daven 3 times a day, Shachris, Mincha, Ma'ariv, morning, afternoon, and evening services. The very last words that we say before we leave the sanctuary, the insulated bubble, the safety of the sanctuary of the synagogue, to go out into the wild west, into the big wild world out there. The very last paragraph that we recite is Al Tira mi pachad pisa It's the paragraph that comes right after Aleinu. And the message is Al Tira. Do not be afraid of a sudden problem. Don't be afraid of anything. If nothing else, what you're supposed to take away with you from the synagogue is don't be afraid of anything. It was actually the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of the Hasidic movement, whose mother passed away when he was very young, and his father passed away, I think he was 9 years old. His father left him with two words, two messages as his final will and testament. Can you imagine leaving a son alone in this world? Mom's already passed away, and dad, Rabbi Eliezer was his name, is leaving his son Yisrolik in this world. It was like 320 something years ago, 1700s. He's leaving him alone in this world. What kind of message can he give him? Two messages. Number one, he says, love every single Jew like yourself with all of your heart, unconditional love. Number two, he says to him, don't be afraid of anything in this whole world. You only have to remain connected to Hashem. Only Hashem has power over you. And that's the message that Eliezer left to his son Yisrolik, who later on became the Baal Shem Tov, founder of the Hasidic movement. Nothing should faze you. Don't be afraid of anything. And these are the final words that we recite morning, afternoon, and evening when we leave the synagogue to go out to the big wide world. It is all a mirage. The stock market, I don't know how the stock market is doing today. I don't know if it's open yet. Don't be afraid of the stock market. Don't be afraid of politics. Don't be afraid of the elections. Don't be afraid of the Democratic or the Republican debate. Don't be afraid of anything. Nothing should faze you. Your faith, your trust is only in God, and nothing has any power over you. Another advantage, we continue on page 353 in this book, in case you just joined us, that is The Gates of Trust. It's in the book called Duties of the Heart, which I hope that you will purchase on Amazon for 40 or 50 bucks. It will be delivered to your home. A very, very worthwhile investment to adorn your bookshelf at home. I encourage you to buy a copy. It's a 2-volume set. It's available in English, originally written in Arabic in the 13th century, a truly classic Jewish work. Another advantage, a person's trust in God will enable him to turn his heart away from worldly concerns and devote it wholly to the ways of God's service. Then, in his tranquility of soul, peace of mind, and diminished anxiety, he will be like the alchemist. Interesting. I don't know, we don't talk much about alchemy today, but back in the 13th century, alchemist was a big deal. They were searching for the ability to make gold out of garbage. One who knows how to turn silver into gold and copper and tin into silver through science and skill. Today, we've mastered the art of alchemy. You have people that have managed to work out how to make millions of dollars from a website, or billions of dollars from a website. You know, today is the largest taxi company in the world, owns not a single taxi. I'm talking about Uber. The largest hotel company in the world owns not a single hotel room, and that is Airbnb. They managed to create gold out of garbage, gold out of nothing, out of thin air. It's amazing, billionaires. But if you think about it, Rabbi Bachai is telling us that the one who trusts in God is more. He'll be like the alchemist. He'll be like the alchemist. Why? Let's see why. And he uses alchemy as an example to help us understand. You'll notice as we learn, Rabbeinu Bachai is the Gates of Trust. You'll notice that he's very, very methodical, extremely analytical. This guy does not leave a stone unturned. What a brilliant, organized mind. Let's go through this. The alchemist needs his work for certain materials. Needs for his work certain materials, without which he cannot accomplish anything. He's got to have raw material. And these materials are not available at all times and in all places. But one who trusts in God is assured of his sustenance by any one of the means available in the world. So the one who trusts in God, he doesn't worry about not having his tools. Wherever he is, he knows that he has whatever he needs because God provides everything that he needs. That's it. There's nothing to worry about. As it says in scripture, quote, in order to teach you that not on bread alone can man live, rather man can live on anything that proceeds out of the mouth of God. For at no time and in no place are the means of obtaining his livelihood withheld from him. He knows, God gives me whatever I need, when and where I need it. If I don't have it, it means that I don't need it right now. So he's never stressed out. As you know from the story of Elijah and the ravens, Elijah had to run away from the king Achav, who was trying to kill him, Queen Isabel. So he ran away to a cave. He was by a river Chris. And over there was a great famine going on. It's a beautiful story. During that great famine, God provided the raven, or arranged that the ravens would bring food from the kitchen of the king. They would bring meat and bread to Elijah in the cave. He provided for all of his needs. Another story, the widow from Sarfas. The widow from Sarfas, which translates as France, another story with Elijah. This is a woman that came crying to Elijah. She didn't have any money. So Elijah told her that he asked her what she had in the house. She said just a little cruse of oil. He told her to bring all empty vessels to her house and just pour the cruse of oil. And the cruse of oil didn't stop pouring until all the vessels were filled all the way to the top. So basically, God provides according to your needs, depending on how many vessels. That's how God provides. The cake baked on coals and the cruse of water, and the account of the prophets of Avadia, who said, I hid 100 of God's prophets, 50 to a cave, and I provided them with bread and water. And it is also said, young lions are poor and hungry, but those who seek God like nothing that is good. Fear God, you his consecrated ones. For those who fear him lack nothing. And that's the message that we learned today in the Gates of Trust. The message is that one who trusts in God knows that all of his needs are taken care of. He has nothing to be afraid. Nothing phases him. You might lose your job. The recession, depression, unemployment doesn't faze him. He knows that my sustenance, my livelihood is in the hands of God. I'm not afraid. There's a beautiful story in Russia. And, he was sent to Siberia. His name was Rabbi Futafas. Mendel Futafas was there in Siberia in the Gulag, which is these forced labor camps. They had no fences around them because there was absolutely nowhere to run and hide. When you were 25 hours by train away from the nearest civilization, deep in the snow, there was really nowhere to go. If you ran away, you'd probably die and freeze to death. So they had no fences around in these forced labor camps back in Russia. You're talking about 60, 50 years ago. And together with Mendel were other enemies of the state, of the communists, were political dissidents, were thinkers, philosophers, lawyers. And they were all melancholy. They were all very upset. And they noticed that Mendel was always happy. You know, this unlikely group of people, professors, doctors, lawyers, thinkers, and the chassid, the Lubavitcher chassid from Lubavitch. They would sit around the campfire at night and they would talk and they would say to Mendel, why are you so happy? We're all so depressed. And he answered them as follows. He said, look, none of you have your tools here with you. You know, the professor, if you're removed from your university, and the lawyer, if you're removed from your courts and your workbooks, and the doctor, if you don't have your patients, and you're useless, you're lost. You don't know, you serve no purpose. But me, he said, wherever I am is where my master wants me. My mission is to serve God wherever I am. So a few months ago, I was serving God in St. Petersburg. Now I'm serving God in the Gulag. This is where God wants me to be. Why should I not be happy? I'm always happy because wherever I am exactly where I need to be. And what an incredible attitude to take on your life. How often does it happen to us, friends, that we say to ourselves the words, if only. If only. If only I had as much money as my brother-in-law. If only I had married someone else. If only I had different kind of children or a different kind of job or a different kind of house, or if I got a different kind of whatever. If only, if only, if only. We live our lives mourning what could have been. But it's the one who trusts in God that says there's no if only. Where I am is exactly where I need to be. What I have is exactly what I need. And what I don't have is precisely what I don't need. The litmus test for today's lesson as to whether you have trust in God is whether you're at peace. If you're frustrated, if you're wishing for more, then you're not trusting in God. You're trusting in money or resources or something else, and you're frustrated. But if you trusted in God, God who is number one, almighty, number two, who is just, number three, who is kind. If you trusted in God who has these properties, almighty, just, and kind, you have nothing to be afraid of. And you look at your bank account and you say, no, I guess this is what God wants me to have. So that's it. I'm going to have to be happy with my lot. And that's indeed the words of Ethics of the Fathers, which says, who is wealthy, Ezehu Ashir, Hasamech Bechelko, someone who is happy with his lot. And that's the bottom line, folks.